Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, discussing all things audiobooks with the authors that write the stories and the narrators that perform them. Brought to you by Viviana, Enchantress of Books.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 14 of the Audiobook Lovin Podcast. My guest today is narrator Savannah Peachwood. Welcome, Savannah, to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so thrilled to talk to you because we've actually met in real life a few years ago at a convention, and I think you might be one of the, besides maybe Andy and maybe one or two other ones, but we don't really get a chance to meet you guys a whole lot, especially with recent activities and events, but I digress.
Yeah, in the flesh. It was so
Yeah.
great to meet you. I miss conventions and people, humans.
Yeah. Well, we're getting there. It looks like some stuff is starting to pop up for
Yes.
next year and so on and so forth. And so I'm really hoping that things get in a much better situation across the world, and we'll be able to attend events where we get to hang out with you guys and go grab coffee like we did that last time over there.
Me too. That was so fun.
Yeah. But for those who may not know you, why don't we start with having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been narrating, and how you got started.
Sure. So I'm Savannah Peachwood. I started in audiobooks. I realized actually this is going to be my 10th year in audiobooks. I started in 2011. At the end of the year was when I recorded my first book. So I did the NYU Tisch acting program in New York, and they have a relationship with Audible Studios out in Newark, New Jersey. And they are always looking for new narrators, and I was lucky enough to get recommended to a workshop that became kind of like a cattle call audition, they call it. And then there was a third round, and then I got my first book in 2011. So yeah, and it's been audiobooks ever since. I started kind of slow as a, on the side work, a book every 3 months or 4 months. And then a few years later, I went full time and haven't looked back.
How many books are you averaging now?
It's funny, I was just looking at my spreadsheets today. I average 2 to sometimes 3 books a week, which I
Wow.
feel really lucky to do. But also, I'm doing these dual projects, so I really only have half of a lot of these books. But yes, I book out, which I feel very lucky about.
That's good. That's good. Speaking of the dual parts and stuff, how do you go about preparing for a new book and prepping it once you get cast?
Yeah, it kind of depends book to book, but the process is generally pretty much the same. I get emails from different producers, different companies, and they say, "Hey, we have a book for you. This will be your co-narrator." And then we have an email thread with my co-narrator, and we're able to touch base on any crazy names or accents or things like that. And I've been working with these guys for years now, so we have a rapport. Some guys, we have different preferred methods of communication. Like I always just like text with Zach Weber,
Mhm.
or sometimes I'll like Facebook message with people. Like that's how we started talking, so that's just how we continue talking. And then a lot of guys, it's via email. I love working with Teddy Hamilton because we will send like voice memos to each other. Um, just like the iPhone voice memos, which are really
Mhm.
fun and easy. And I can be like, did you say this name like that? Right. So anyway, yeah, that's generally how I stay in touch with the boys.
Do you read the book, like the entire book on it as a whole, or just your parts, or how do you, from that perspective?
Yes. Okay. This is a question that my answer to it has evolved over these 10 years. So I would say up until maybe 2 years ago, I was really obsessive about preparation for performing these books. So I would read it front to back and I would highlight all of the characters in different colors. And if I'm going to be in studio with other narrators or engineers of the past, I would make sure to usually do that prep as well because I don't want to waste anyone's time.
Mhm.
But now, as I just finished my like 300 and something book. So I've done a lot of them now. So I have sort of like a workflow that helps me, and I'm able to sort of read at a skim pace as opposed to religiously prep with color coding every character. So it's relaxed a little bit. I know a lot of narrators don't have time to read the book at all. I also have an amazing prepper that I hire for, my higher paying titles, where I can afford to pay her to help me know what to anticipate with each book too, to really get in there and break down each chapter into like a summary for me. So yeah, prep varies book to book, but I always like to know what I'm getting into before I sit down at the mic.
So a few of you guys have, I've noticed, have preppers, which I didn't even know was a gig when it comes down to this lovely audiobook community. And I know that that's something that it's good to know these different roles, because people are like, well, how do I get in there? And I'm like, there's different ways. I kind of like it when you guys bring up these new roles or something like that to kind of address them, because there are so many people that are like, well, I know I don't sound like a narrator, but
Yeah, there
how
are
else can
so
I get
many
involved?
gigs in the industry. Yeah, it's a whole team, There's preppers, there's proofers, there's beta listeners. A lot of authors I know have hired beta listeners to listen to the audio early and have a second set of eyes and ears on the project. So there's a lot of different options for people who would like to work in the industry.
Yeah, that's a lot of cool options. And I think more and more as we continue to talk about them, and also the community continues to expand, more of these come up. When it comes down to sitting in the booth, what
Yeah.
is your routine like before starting? Like, do you have a ritual routine before sitting down and recording the audio?
Kind of. I got a pandemic puppy. I got a dog this year. And her name is Daisy, and she's precious. I love her so much. So my life has changed a lot, as far as what I have commitments to, outside of the booth. So she gets me up a lot earlier than I would necessarily get up on my own. So I'm, up in the 6 o'clock hour and taking her out and just having a lot more full morning. I always like to eat before I go in the booth. A lot of people, will like fast or whatever, but my tummy makes noises. So I usually have oatmeal in the morning, oatmeal with some kind of fruit in it. And that seems to keep the grumbles down. Um, I have always a couple of beverages. I usually have a giant water and an iced or hot coffee, and maybe also a hot tea. I have a really fat chapstick that I'm obsessed with. That's just part of my routine. A big part of being a narrator who self-records is software management, file management, and there's a lot of admin too, just emails and lots of balls in the air. So I try to spend a little bit of time on that in the morning as well, and then I get to work.
Puppy, huh?
Yes. Yeah, she's a rescue. She's
Mhm.
5 months now. I got her when she was 2 months. So she's fun. She's a handful, but she's precious.
Yeah, what breed? I know that he's a rescue, so
Yeah,
usually you have
she's
to.
a mutt. There's kind of a story there.
Mhm.
When we rescued her, the rescue said she was an Australian Shepherd mix. And she has that really pretty merle coat, which is like the speckledy black and white. And we did the DNA test that you can get for dogs. We did 2 of them actually, because that's how extra of a person I am. And the DNA test came back, and she is 0% Australian Shepherd, and she is a mix of 17 different breeds. 17. The biggest being like 17%, or I think maybe 20% German Shepherd, Labrador Retriever. There's Chihuahua mixed in, White Shepherd, um, all kinds of dogs. Chow chow. So she's a big old mutt, but love her.
So at 5 months, she's still potty trained and stuff like that, but she still has that puppy energy.
Yes, she is big puppy energy. Yes. But she also sleeps a lot, which is a great thing about puppies. So I actually have her little sleeping crate in the same room that I narrate. So if she like stirs a bit, I actually hear her and have to stop recording and check on her and come back in. But yeah,
Oh.
she's very, very high energy, which is fun. It keeps me busy, which is
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, no, it's the puppies are great. I have 5.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. I want to hear about every single one of these puppies. Maybe not in this exact moment, or yes, please in this exact moment, but
all a rescue. One of them, so technically 4 of mine. The last one I inherited when my mom passed away. I inherited him. His name is Caramel, and he's, of all the dogs, he's what I call the Velcro dog. If I go anywhere, I must be within vision sight. He's here in the
Yes.
office with me. If I go, basically anywhere, he's like, "What you doing? I'm going with you." But my other ones are all rescue. Raven is the oldest, who's a pug.
Oh,
So black pug, snout and stuff like that. And then she's getting older now, so she has a couple of white hairs. And I'm like, oh my God, you're getting old. And then I have my 2 pit mixes, Nico and Mocha.
sweet
And
babies.
yeah, no, adorable. Mocha is a greyhound pit mix. And I say greyhound simply because she has that body, that back hound hit that the greyhounds have.
Mhm.
Very slender waist. But oh my God, she swears she's only 5 pounds and wants to sit on you and pet. And I'm like, I love you, but get off me. You're 65 pounds. And then Nico is very sophisticated and prim and proper. And he'll sit next to you and ask if it's okay to lay down and stuff like that. And so those are complete different personality. And then the baby is a Chihuahua mixed with who knows what. He has a long neck and kind of reminds me a little bit of a deer when he's sleeping with the neck on the back, kind of like thing. I'm like, dude, but he is so cute and plays with my pit. The way that they play, sometimes I'm like, I have to remind myself, they're just playing, because the pit has his mouth completely wide open, and Atticus, the puppy, which is almost a year now, is inside the mouth. And I'm going, and I'm like, don't eat him.
Yeah, please, if you could not, it'd be better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's I totally understand the puppy energy, because I've had them all since, Raven I had since she's 8 weeks, Atticus 8 weeks, Nico 6 months, and Mocha about 5 months. So yeah, I remember those days.
Oh man. Okay. It's
Yeah.
giving me a reality check that like I think my life is busy with 1 puppy and here you are with 5 dogs. Yeah. Wow.
It makes things
Respect.
interesting. Yeah, it makes things interesting. Going out on vacations or even weekends and stuff like that. It's interesting, but they're all pretty much potty trained, and they are very chill. They sleep a lot like yours at this point, and they completely claim the couches. So it's like, okay. And they when you walk by, they're like, why are you waking me up? I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Kings of the castle.
Basically, but and then it's moments like these when we're recording internally, I'm like, please don't bark, please don't bark, please don't bark.
Yes.
So I can only imagine when you're recording, having the crate right there, or his bed,
Yes.
and
yeah, at first I was like, oh no, what have I done? I've exploded my career. I like spent so much time. I bought a home and moved out of the city during the pandemic, and I feel so blessed and lucky to get to do that. But a lot of things have changed for me in the past year, and I worked so hard to get quiet. I think that was the hardest thing is, for a long time I lived in New York City and I always went into the studios to record. And I was so happy and my life was so balanced, but we won't dwell. This is the state of the world and we move on. So now I have a home studio and I work alone, and that's fine. But it's funny how there's certain city noises and then there's country noises. I have a little bit of space around me now, but even so, my neighbor had a literal excavator in their yard on Friday digging holes, and there's nothing you can do. You just have to wait those kinds of things out. So
Yeah, similar stories when I've talked to other narrators that own homes is the same thing, or they live in a more residential area, or the constructions and the tree trimmers or the lawnmowers, and yeah, lots of perks from working from home.
yes,
Lots of perks. But at the same time, I'm going, yeah, I could have probably been done by now if I would have just been in the studio.
Right. Exactly.
Speaking of recording, when it comes down to the characters and you've been already cast and everything, how do you go about selecting how the characters are going to sound, like their tones and things like that?
Totally. Well, it's kind of intuitive, I think, at this point. I don't have like a formal process, but I generally make the main character as close to my own voice as possible. And that's simply for, well, a lot of reasons. For kind of authenticity, I feel like I'm the most able to give my own voice to a main character, and I'm usually cast because of that sound that I'm able to give. So with a lot of books, authors will write in a friend group for both the hero and heroine, and they will have like the sassy friend and the ditzy friend and the maybe like more bookish friend, and those things I'm able to lean into those vocal qualities as well. So usually that's pretty easy to infer. With the men, I do spend a lot of time thinking about who my co-narrator is. My male voice, I try to make it sound different when I'm narrating with someone like Tim Page versus someone like Aidan Snow, who has that like crazy, deep, rumbly guy voice versus
Mm-hmm.
like a guy who's more here, who's more like friendly, middle voiced. So yeah, I try to keep that in mind with the gentleman. But yeah, it's different for every book.
When you're narrating, rather when you're co-narrating with the male narrators, some of them have this specific almost cadence or a groove to their voice and stuff like that. Like Teddy Hamilton has one.
Right, he does.
Do you kind of like try to envision what that cadence is when it comes down to that character, or do you just vocalize the character as it comes to you?
Yes, I think I do. I don't know that I've ever outright thought about it, but as I'm sitting here now, I'm thinking like when I narrate a book with Teddy Hamilton, I do kind of picture him, what
Mhm.
he's like sitting at the mic doing, saying his mannerisms. So yeah, I do in my mind kind of picture the guy who's my team member on the
Mhm.
project.
Yeah. But when it comes down to that cadence, I mean, there's some of them that you can't even figure out what that is, but there's others that are just like that's Teddy.
I think I have one as well. I wonder if the guys ever think about that with me, but I think
Oh,
I have a pretty, I don't know, maybe I'm just self-conscious about it, but I feel like I have a cadence as well.
many of us are a sucker for accents. Do you have a favorite accent to perform?
Yes. Really the only accent that I love performing is a Southern accent because I am from the South. So I grew up with a pretty thick accent. And I went to theater school and I always joke that they beat it out of you in theater school. So now I just kind of have it in my back pocket available. But I do a lot of Southern accent projects. I love pulling out my Southern accent for books because it just feels like comfortable and home and easy breezy. So
Yeah, I know. I was going to ask because when you say Southern, I'm going, okay, well, is it like Savannah, Georgia Southern, or is it more like North Carolina, or if it's like a Texan accent? Because people are
there are
particular.
differences. Yes,
Yeah.
people are very particular. Yeah, North Carolina is hard for me because North Carolina, like they drop all the R's kind of, and it's more like North Carolina.
Hmm.
And that's not my natural. One of my, I know that you asked for two truths and a lie. So one of my lines is about where I'm from. So we'll circle
Okay, so
back
we'll
to
skip
that.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, with that being your favorite to perform, which accents has been the hardest for you to do?
Oh man, there are narrators like Zachary Weber and I always joke. We went to school together at NYU. Um, about how great he is at accents and how much I struggle with them because it's just not something that comes super easy to me. So I really try not to do any first person accents that are outside of my natural sphere. Like, I would never narrate a book with a British female main character because that, if you ask me, should go to a British narrator. And same kind of thing for first person for Irish or Boston is really hard. Um, but I've gotten better through the years, and I do have some training that I can fall back on. But yeah, my least favorite is probably like Boston accents. They're really hard for me. I did a Scottish accent for a book that was actually really fun. That was for a book called, I believe, Wild on My Mind. And that one was really fun. It was actually a Scottish guy with a stutter. So that was challenging but fun. And then I did the main character in an L.J. Shen book in The Unlikely Event was Irish. So that was something that I worked really hard on. And, some people thought I did okay and some people didn't love it in the reviews, but I think most people enjoyed that book. Anyway, I'm rambling. I wonder if you should cut out that bit.
Well,
Sorry.
no, when it comes down to the accents, it's always fascinating for me because I've not traveled outside of the States, but being from Miami, Florida, it's, basically a melting pot of a bunch of different accents, including a lot of Europeans. I have heard a lot of the accents and, now we have YouTube and all this other fun stuff, but I always find it hilarious when some of these reviews says, oh my God, their accent, like their Irish accent was so not real. And it was about an Irish narrator. He's actually Irish.
Yeah.
And it's happened too with someone that's British as well. And it's like, but he's actually British. And
Right.
so
Shane East, I think, has joked about that before
yes,
online.
yeah,
Where it's like,
yeah.
exactly.
He's like, but I am from England.
Mhm.
It's just what we think it sounds like, or if they're depending on the dialect, if it's coming from the north or the south or from one end or the other. It's always fun when it
Right.
comes
And
down
as
to
a
accent.
narrator, all we can do is our very best. And that is what I try to do for each book, is to really just put my whole heart into it and give it my best. And, you're not going to be everybody's favorite flavor of ice cream, and that's totally fine.
It just means that we have more ice cream for us when you are our flavors.
Yes.
So romance is has many subgenres, and so I call it like it's an umbrella term where all the subgenres kind of go underneath it.
Yes.
What is your favorite subgenre in romance to perform?
Oh, wow. Good question. You're so right that romance is an umbrella for so many subgenres, and I've been really lucky to kind of dip a toe into several. I would say that my favorite to perform is just what comes most naturally to me, which is like a contemporary comedic rom-com romance. They're just right in the pocket and it feels really fun, and I'm really confident the whole time that I'm performing those books. So I really love light, bright rom-coms. I really like performing comedy. And there's so many authors who are so fucking funny. They make me laugh while I'm working, which is so, enjoyable. So I'd say that that's my favorite. But I get to do a lot of different kinds, which is really fun. I'm starting book 4 in a werewolf series for Eva Chase later this month. So that has been really fun and different. And, there's so many. There's dark romance and yeah, there's everything. So
Is there a genre that you have yet to narrate in that you'd like to?
gosh, that's a good question too. So I just did a book that I don't have a ton of opportunities to do, which was an MMF book. And I don't think I can say what it is yet because it's not out for pre-order, but I did just do one of those, which was saucy, spicy fun. So, yeah, I don't do a ton of that, but there are some here and there sprinkled in.
So is that one of the genres that you kind of wish that you could dive more into?
Yeah, it's always fun to switch it up.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to do WLW books as well, like lesfic. I would really enjoy more of those books. There's so many genres of romance out there, so yeah, I'd love to. I'm happy for whatever comes my way. If an author, hears me for their project, it's so flattering, and I'm just gonna do my best in any book I get assigned.
No, it seems like every couple of years a new genre gets categorized a little bit more. I don't want to say invented because they've always been there. It's just one of those, someone just said, hey, we should actually label that. I mean, years ago we didn't have new adults and now we do. So
I love new adult, just to say that too. Yes, like the college age is just like right in that pocket that I love to perform, especially because, I'm kind of closer to that age maybe than I am to like some of the books that I do that are second chance romance. So it feels really authentic to me.
you mentioned loving rom-coms and laughing in the booths and stuff like that. Have you ever got into that one of those books where you've just cracked up and it just took you a while to get over the giggles?
Yes, absolutely. There is this one book I did last year called Liar, Liar, Hearts on Fire by Pippa Grant. I lost my mind narrating this book. I narrated it with Joe Arden, and it's a baseball book. But there are some hilarious scenes, and there are ducks in this book, and that is all I will say. But they are so funny. That book had me rolling. So yeah, I really enjoy the rom-coms.
Pippa Grant is known for her animals in her books.
Yes.
So so when it comes down to you losing it from laughing, do you keep, I know a lot of you guys like punch and roll, but do you keep those bloopers?
I don't archive them, no. Man, I should.
You
Maybe I'll
should.
start. Yeah, no, I don't usually because, like you said, punch and roll, the workflow is that whenever you make a mistake or need to go back, you record over what you know,
Mm-hmm.
made a mistake on. So I don't mark them, but maybe I should start shooting them off in little clips. So that's
Yeah,
an interesting idea.
those are always fun. And then it also gets us listeners curious as to what book was that again? So yeah. Well, I find that it's just fascinating when you're busting out laughing and then you kind of have to go back because of the punch and roll and then do that scene all over again and not trying to giggle.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's hard. And the same thing happens with the really heavy books as well. Like, I think, I think I it wouldn't be out of line to say that I'm known as like a narrator who gets very emotional, brings a lot of emotion to the books. So in these like heavy books, sometimes I feel like I let myself go too far into the emotion where maybe it's distracting or hard to understand even. So a lot of times I sort of self-correct or self-edit and I'll say, "All right, pull it back a little, deep breath and roll on." And yeah, it's the same thing with comedy and the drama.
You've been doing this for quite some time now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, what is one of the more common myths about being a narrator that you want to debunk?
Oh, wow. Okay. That's such a good question. I would say that one of the myths that I would like to debunk about narrating is that you can just sit and talk all day. And it's the same thing. I get a lot of people, and it's well-meaning, I know, but I get a lot of people who tell me that they read to their grandkids, so maybe they would like to be a narrator as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I always encourage everyone to give it their best shot, but it's I call it a marathon. It's like athletic acting because I'm in a booth by myself, completely still from 10 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m. on a good day every day with like an hour break in the middle, and it's a long game. It's not a 10-page book. So yeah, it requires a lot of mental focus. I It's also one of those jobs where I can't do anything else at the same time while I work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think fondly about like what it would be like to have just like a job I could do on a laptop anywhere. And my job has so many special accommodations. Like I need complete silence, which is kind of hard to come by, and I can't be on my phone or watching anything else. I have to have my full attention on the project. So I don't know. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I could do it too. And while I want to encourage everyone to try because I think a lot of people maybe could, I think a lot of people think it's a lot easier of a gig than it is.
Yeah, I don't think people tend to think about all those nuances that are small. Like even before we started officially recording, I took my bracelets off
Hmm.
because, and I'm not one of you guys, but I know that trick already because
Right.
I realized it the other day when I was trying to record something. I heard I'm like, what is that fucking noise? Oh crap, it's the bracelet. And sitting still because I'm like, I'm only doing this for what, 30, 40 minutes. And I'm going, don't move the chair. Don't move the chair.
Oh my gosh, squeaky chairs, the
Yeah.
bane of my existence. I'm struggling with my chair in the booth this week, actually. I have like my WD-40 out twice a day, being like, all right, I'm going to find you, squeak. Spray it down.
Yeah. And does it squeak afterwards saying, no, you didn't?
Yeah, it talks back for sure.
Yeah. When you're not working and you're having these long ass days, what do you do for fun?
I think that answer has changed so much in the past year. When I used to live in New York City, I would go out with my friends. There's always things to do, go out to the park, or there's all kinds of, outdoor dining and stuff. The narrator community in especially New York City is so tight. So a lot of my best buds are also narrators or engineers or producers. So I miss that so much, just friendship and hanging out. um, but I also play guitar. I've been doing that since I was a kid. I'm not that great, but I really enjoy it. Um, and now that I have a dog, it feels like my whole identity. But yeah, and then yeah, I don't know. What else do I do for fun? I'm trying to garden this year for the first time.
Mm.
And it's a lot of work. There's a lot to learn. So I'm hoping that my garden next year will be twice as good as my garden this year. But
So what are you growing?
I have so many seeds, but I'm trying to get them planted at the right time. But I have truly everything. I have lettuce, zucchini, kale, tomatoes, peppers, everything. But they're all little babies right now. It just started being warm enough where it wouldn't frost over.
Yeah, that's a goal of mine too. One day to start that. I have those wood boxes that you put on top of your yard. The
Raised
raised
beds,
boxes.
yeah, I
Yes.
use raised beds too. I don't trust I have a lot of like wildlife around, so I want it up off the ground.
It's still in the patio in the back. It's been
Yeah.
about a year.
Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'll do this. No, not this weekend. It's too hot. And then like today it's been raining all day. And I'm like, nah, never mind. So yeah, it'll be fun. And but when you see those growing and they start really producing and stuff like that, you're gonna be like, yes.
Right.
It's I guess the best feeling. So that'll be fun for you.
Yeah.
And I hope that you'll post some of that stuff on social media so we can see it too. That'll be
Yes.
fun to do.
Yeah, I have kind of stepped away a little bit from social media. I started on social media early. Like I was always like I felt like I was kind of like alone on social media as a narrator when I first got on there. And then now everybody's on there, which is so amazing. But I actually had some kind of like negative experiences with people on social media that just made me feel like I wanted to isolate a little, like pull away from it. But I'm enjoying it a lot more now. So I'm back. Also, it just feels, as somebody who does 2 to 3 books a week now, it's a lot to keep up. So I always try to repost anything anybody tags me in. That has been something that's really fun and really manageable because I'm so grateful that anybody would like let me know that they liked a book that I work on. So it's easy for me to be like, oh my gosh, somebody listened and they liked it, and I can repost that. So that is always really fun and easy. So
Mhm.
that's where I'm living in there right now.
Yeah, no, a lot of people, because we're so used to it, I guess, past couple of years of social media, especially this past year and a half, it's almost like, oh, it's easy. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a lot of work. Like, what do you post? And do you really want to see what I'm eating? Is this really interesting? But at least for you guys, I know that is, like what you guys are working on, because there's some of us that have calendars, just so you know, about what's coming up in the future. So we can.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And when it comes down to our favorite narrators, we like to know so we can put you guys on our calendars and make sure that nothing else gets in the way of that day of release, because that is what we're listening to. So.
Oh my gosh, it's so heartwarming to hear that because it's just an isolating industry to like sit alone in a booth and like really give your all to these books, and then who listens to it? You sometimes hear back, but wow, I think like the next time I'm having like a tough day in the booth, I'm just gonna like picture you and like dedicated to you, and that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of us that are just like, we call ourselves like the book friends, and we're constantly saying, hey, what do you listening to now? And hey, have you heard of this one? And constantly recommending. And even sometimes when we're in a funk, we're like, I need something funny. And they're like, oh my God, you have to listen to this from Pippa Grant and Savannah Peachwood, so good, and stuff like that. So it's a really good community. Of course, like with anything, there's always a bad apple here and there.
Of course.
We try to think better and just say, hey, so Savannah, that book that you were narrating, it was so good.
I have seen that online where people like ask people not to tag authors in negative reviews. And I totally get that because there are truly, probably at this point, there are hundreds of thousands of reviews of books that I've narrated. And like we talked about before, you're not going to be everybody's flavor of ice cream, but knowing that people are enjoying it is just so fulfilling and such a positive feeling. And it really is 99.9% just totally heartwarming.
Oh,
So,
yeah. It's a good feeling when you're doing something and people like it.
yeah.
You know?
The toughest part is so many of the books that I narrate, and I'm lucky that I'm at this level in my career now. So many of them, you're not allowed to talk about them until they're either A, up for pre-order, or B, like on release day. So that's always a bummer because I'd love to be like, hey, I'm in the booth today working on XYZ. I did actually write to my producer for the book that I was recording today to be like, I'm going to be on Viviana's podcast and I would like to tell people about this book because I loved it. Can I? And they said yes. So,
yay.
yeah.
You know what's a good trick for that though, as a solve, is even if you can't tell us the name of the book or the author, you can still tell us that you're in love with a werewolf. And that, you're in outer space, or that you're in a small town and, the guy's an asshole because he's a business owner and stuff like that. And then we'll make notes of them as narrating a guy, who's an ass. And then when it comes out, we're like, oh, that's the book she was talking about. Nice. And then we'll add the title to it.
Right.
But a lot of authors are now starting to realize the marketing opportunities about sharing who the narrators are. And so they're doing casting reveals way before the book's up for even pre-order.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's so cool.
It is, yeah.
I love teaming up with authors for things like that too. It's always great to feel like I can help build the buzz and like get people excited about the books that I like have already performed and I know what's coming and it feels like I'm in on a little secret.
Yeah, that's true. That is really true. Here is a question that I actually reached out to someone that loves you as a narrator. Her name is Sarah McQueen. And I said, so, hey, I'm talking to Savannah. What questions do you have for her?
Oh my gosh, Sarah, my new BFF.
Yeah, no, she's newer to the love of romance as far as audiobooks goes into the audiobook community, but she has been devouring it. When I learned that she was that she loved you as a narrator, I'm like, I gotta ask her. Like, hey, if you can ask her, Savannah, anything, what would you ask her? And she's like, I'm so bad at this. And I'm like, come on, what would you ask her? And she's I adore her. She's so cute. She's like, okay. So if you could have any animal as a pet, what would it be and why?
Oh, wow. Okay, let me think about it.
Any animal.
If I could have any animal as a pet. Wow. I don't know. I think if I could have any animal as a pet, I would want a white tiger. And I feel kind of bad saying that after watching like Tiger King at the beginning of the pandemic, because I know it's not ethical, but I think they are the most majestic, beautiful creatures. I would love to just like snuggle up with a giant white tiger at the end of the day to decompress. And like, dangle a string in front of it and play with it like a house cat. I think I would enjoy that. Yeah. Or maybe like, maybe a dolphin or like a giant orca whale. Yeah. I'm bad at answering the question too, I think. But yeah, I think white tiger or some kind of like giant aquatic animal.
Cool. So there you go, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
It's a great question. I think sometimes it's one of those, like, when we can think about it, like, okay, with no issues, no poaching or anything like that, if you could have anything, I'm like, I probably would have like a Black Panther. So
big cats.
Yes. Yeah. They're cute. They're cuddly. They're kitty cats. They're like, no, that's a cat. Like, no, they're kitty cats.
Your face off. If
but I have another book friend. Her name is Kelly Love. Love her name. And we were constantly talking about books here and there and the narrators. And again, letting her know that I was going to talk to you. I was like, hey, what, I mean, I always have these awesome questions for them, but I always feel like they're the same questions. So she's like, Savannah has this incredible innocent sounding voice. You should ask her, which Disney heroine would you voice if you could voice any of them?
Oh my God, what a great question, Kelly Love. I love that question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, as a kid, my favorites were Belle, just because I'm a brunette and bookish. So I loved Belle. But I also really like Jasmine because I feel like she is like sultry, salty, sassy, and we vibe. So yeah, Belle or Jasmine.
And in her notes and stuff to me, she's like, about the Disney heroine, he goes, they're not all princesses, as you know. I'm like, yes, that's true.
That's true. Yep.
What is your favorite word?
Oh my goodness gracious. What is my favorite word? That is a hard one. My favorite word. Okay, well, my favorite word when it comes to audiobooks is series because I love when I get an email that's like new series for you because it means I have a lot of books and I can fill up my calendar. I love the word series. But I don't know. I think my favorite word is probably something basic like love or home. Those things have become really valuable to me, especially in the past couple years. So yeah, love or home.
Okay. Here's a fun one. What's your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
See, that one was quick. I'm like, she'll be quick on this one. Fuck.
Yeah. Fuck. It's just so easy
Mhm.
and versatile. I love fuck. Motherfucker. Yeah.
Could be used as a noun, adverb, so many options. What song do you have to sing along with when you hear it? Regardless of where you're at, regardless who's around.
Oh, wow. I would say probably Jolene by Dolly Parton.
I love that.
It'll
I
get
love
me
that
every
song.
time. Yeah. It'll get me every time. Anything by Dolly, really. Yeah, I just anything she sings, it's such a bop. You got to sing it along with her.
And there's been some really good, remakes and covers of that, Jolene. So we have reached the game segments portion of our talk.
Great. Love a game.
Yeah. So we have a new game that we play with our guests called Two Truths and a Lie, where we try to figure out how good of a liar you are. No, I'm just kidding.
Terrible liar.
Where our guest tells us three things about themselves, which two are true and one is a lie. And the listeners and I, because I like to pretend like we're actually all playing along, try to figure out which one's a lie. So if you're ready.
Okay.
Okay. So what are your three things?
Here are my three things. I skipped a grade. I am from Georgia. And I play the saxophone.
I would do the saxophone because it didn't mention that when I said what I like to do for fun.
It's true. I do play the saxophone.
See? All right. So that one's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. Skip the grade is a lie?
No, I did skip a grade.
Oh, see, again, Southern accents and stuff like that. I thought maybe it would be Georgia. So.
Yes, I was trying to trick you as the point of the game.
Well, you did very well.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me if I'm from Georgia because Savannah Peachwood, Georgia Peaches.
Savannah, Georgia, yeah.
Right. I'm from Tennessee, which is very close to Georgia. But yeah, I grew up in Tennessee. People always talk about pseudonyms, and Savannah Peachwood is a pseudonym, but it's I was born on Peachwood Street, so that's where Peachwood comes from.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got me. What grade did you skip?
I went from first to third, and I always joke about it because it was just because I loved to read. I was a voracious reader as a kid. I was an only child, so I started reading early. They were my best friends, my books, and I was just out outpacing the reading that they had available for me. So I popped from first to third, which was, fine at the time. I feel like it put me on like the right track because I wasn't, like some sort of academic prodigy from then on. I just kind of was like, normal level. But I was always upset about it when I was older because I was the last to drive. I was the last to turn 18. And maybe like the youngest from then on, but that was okay. It all worked out.
So you mentioned saxophone. Do you still play?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I just kind of fuck around with it, but I started in middle school on the alto sax, and I bought myself one for my 21st birthday, to just like have in the house. It's really hard to play in New York City because it's so loud. There's really not a lot of ways to muffle a saxophone because the air comes out of the side of the instrument. So there are certain casings that you can buy to dampen the sound, but now that I'm kind of outside of the city, and especially now that I have this fancy ass vocal booth, I can go to town on my saxophone. It's also a teal saxophone, which is really cool. Yeah, I bought it. There's a story there. I think it's like a blessed instrument that I bought off the wall used at an old vintage shop. But yeah, I do play sax. I can play like the simple basic stuff. I'm no jazz prodigy, but I really enjoy it.
That is so cool and interesting. And teal. Nice.
Yeah.
I love vintage stuff, so that's another thing. Well, thank you for playing and this week we got to know you a lot better. Because did not think. See, I could have sworn it would have been Georgia. But see, you got me. That was good.
Yes.
Hopefully the listeners were a lot better than I was this time around. So before we go, can you tell us what you're currently working on or what's coming up next for you that you can share?
Okay, yes. So I asked for permission to talk about this book because I loved it so much. I just finished it. It's a book called Must Love Dogs and Hockey by Kelly Jameson. And I just recorded that along with Tim Page for Andy Arntt's company, Lyric Audiobooks. And it's basically about a New York City dog walker who starts walking a dog for a very grumpy NHL hockey player. And it's just so cute and funny, and there's a lot of heavy stuff in there too, and gosh, I really loved that book. So I just finished that one this week. I also just wrapped book 3 in a series for Dreamscape. It's a series by Emma Hart, and it's called the Bookworm's Guide series. So there was the Bookworm's Guide to Dating, the Bookworm's Guide to Faking It, and I just finished the Bookworm's Guide to Flirting. And I did that one with Will Watt, a British accent. So that one was fun. And then what else? Oh, I really enjoyed one I did for Claire Kingsley recently for Aaron Spencer's company, One Night Stand Studios. It was called Marrying Mr. Wrong, and it was with Aiden Snow, and they got drunk married in Vegas.
So those are 3 that sounds very, very interesting. I made a note of it because I'm going to grab them.
I hope you love them.
Yeah, no, I will let you know. Thank you for sharing what's coming up next. And I know that Audible always has stuff popping up. Like right now, I think it's it's The Bishop, the Tanglewood novella.
Yeah,
by Sky Warner.
I'm a real small part in a multicast for that one, but yeah, that one was a trip.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it. It has you, Lucy Rivers, Teddy Hamilton, CJ Bloom, and that's by Sky Warner. So that's set to come out in July. But between now and then, that's going to be like a couple more books that are in between. So, that's how Audible rolls. Well, thank you so much, Savannah, for taking the time to hang out with me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. If you're not following Savannah on social media, I will be leaving all the links for you to find her and follow her, especially now that she's thinking about being a little bit more active, and maybe she'll share some bloopers.
Yes.
So maybe if we follow her along, we're like, hey, where are the bloopers at?
Yeah, bother me for bloopers. Comment. Be like, give me the bloopers, bitch.
And you will find all the links to this episode and the stuff that we talked about over at Viviana, Enchantress of Books. So until next time, happy listenings.
A heartfelt thank you to all of our Audiobook Lovin Podcast Patreon. Special thanks to Jen Franklin, Brittany Cottingham, Leanne Schwartz, Christy Reitz, Chrissy Font, Rhonda Pezzarello, Evelyn Clarici, Michelle DaCosta, Michelle Bestard, Farah Blair, Candice Platel, Carol Liebner, Bethany Crane, Jennifer Mirabelli, Kaylee Loring, Victoria Butler, Rula Hart, Carrie Wallace, Brittany Robinette Leiter, Dawn Darsh, Valerie Wall, Sarah McQueen, Lynna Black Pedersen, Nixley Zenner, and Nancy Billows. The Audiobook Lovin Podcast has special Patreon access levels. Join today to receive early access to podcast episodes, exclusive content with our guests, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/audiobooklovin. We thank you for your support.
Thank you for joining us on the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. For links and more information discussed in today's episode, previous podcasts, or the Audiobook Lovin Series, please visit our website, vivianaenchantressofbooks.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a positive review wherever you listen to our podcast. Until next time, happy listening.